Hey, welcome, Jerks. Welcome back. We've been streaming pretty much all day today. We had the Karen Reed retrial, the testimony this morning that we were streaming, and then I did a quick show about Canton Police Chief Rafferty retiring, resigning, whatever you want to call it. She's stepping down, and also covering some of the Karen Reed testimony. But tonight, 6:30, a couple minutes late, 6:32 p.m. The Tonight Show is a kind of politics. It's somebody who's running for office. We had her on the show in the past recently and had a great response to her. She also went on Brian's show, LTL Media, did a great interview there. I've seen that she's been campaigning in the different towns like Canton recently. She's running for district attorney, Norfolk County DA, district attorney. She's a former prosecutor. She's an attorney. She's what we call a very serious person. She's very nice as well. She's intelligent, professional. She's prosecuted major crimes. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of more things to say about her, but I'm happy that she's here and that she's campaigning for this seat, which is against the DA, Michael Morrissey, who's the one who's in the background for Sandra Birchmore and the Karen Reed case and all a bunch of other things too that we've talked about on the show. And so obviously we'd like to see someone new, somebody that's been in the office for 30 plus years, involved in this type of level of scandal. It's time for a change. It is time for change. Just like in Canton, we recently saw the select board, John Conley, good friends with Michael, with DA Conley, John Conley. These guys are like both been in office for 30 plus years. John Conley lost his reelection to a first time candidate, Susan Harrington, very professional, experienced woman. She's replacing him after 30 plus years. We hope to do the same with this district attorney race in Norfolk County. And we think we have the candidate here to do it. Her name is Djuna Perkins, and I'm bringing her up and welcome her back to the show. Thank you so much for being here tonight, Djuna Perkins.
Hi, Mike. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. I'm sure you've been seeing what's going on with the Karen Reed trial a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, Before we get into that, and yeah, there's so much I want to talk about. I want to talk about the protest zones too, because they're arresting people now. But before that, I just want, because I know a lot of people, some people may not have saw the last episode we had you on. So tell us about who you are, how you started, your professional experience. Just tell us who you are and why you decided to run for district attorney.
Sure. So I've been a lawyer in Massachusetts for over 30 years. I came to Massachusetts when I was 17 for college, like so many Massachusetts residents. I was lucky enough to get a 100% financial aid scholarship to Smith College. And then after that, I went to BU Law School. When I was at BU is when I kind of got the prosecution bug because I had an internship, a clerkship with Ralph Martin, who at the time was an assistant U.S. attorney, and he was assigned to investigate the conduct of the Boston police in the wake of the murder of Carol DeMady Stewart. And I realized that I had read Common Ground in college, and I realized that this was a really important watershed time in the history of the city. And watching that whole drama play out and being involved behind the scenes was really fascinating to me. And then the following summer, I did an internship in the Manhattan DA's office. And then when I graduated, I went to the Attorney General's office under Scott Harshbarger. And there I served in the appeals unit, in narcotics and special investigations, and in the Safe Neighborhood Initiative in Brockton District Court. And then after leaving the AG's office, by that time, Ralph Martin had become the district attorney of Suffolk County. And so I went there, and in my last job there, I was the chief of the domestic violence unit, where I was responsible for oversight prosecution of all domestic violence cases, including those involving sexual assault in Suffolk County. I also served as the supervisor of the Dorchester District Court, and I was on the homicide response team. I also helped implement and run the Dorchester Domestic Violence Court. Then after I left the DA's office, I went into private practice where I've been for the last 20 years. Primarily, the first 10 years, I worked for a small firm where I represented crime victims in cases against institutions like the Catholic Church for for the clergy sex abuse cases, as well as other childhood sexual abuse cases against colleges, schools, workplaces, camps, nonprofits. And then in 2012, I started my own practice where I focus on investigating sexual misconduct and discrimination for schools and workplaces and municipalities and police departments. So I go all over Massachusetts. So essentially, for all of that time, I have been I've worked essentially in the same kind of subject matter in different settings. And so, which I think has really added to my professional experience. I've also, I've written an amicus brief to the Supreme Judicial Court on a rule that helped preserve an important evidence rule in sexual assault cases. I also represented the family of the victim of alleged Craigslist killer, Philip Markoff. And I also represented a woman who was abused by a fertility doctor, Roger Hardy, that exposed a 10-year pattern of patient sexual abuse. So as a former prosecutor, I always maintained from the beginning that once a prosecutor, always a prosecutor. So even though I've been gone for 20 years I'm still in touch with many of my former colleagues. And I still always identify that way. So I first noticed I first kind of started paying attention to the Norfolk DA's office. Well, I should say I sometimes do criminal defense cases, and I had one case in particular that really I was shocked by how the DA's office handled it. But then also in the summer of 23, when I saw the video that the district attorney put out about the Karen Reed case, in which he talked about Trooper Proctor and how great he was, I thought, my jaw was on the floor, because that was completely unethical in my view. No prosecutor I ever had worked for would have made such a statement. And then I noticed a number of other what seemed to me to be errors in the prosecution of the Karen Reed case. But then really it was the Sandra Birchmore case and the failure to properly investigate her death that really sent me over the edge, because what many people don't realize is that it's the district attorney who's ultimately responsible for death investigations. It's not the MEs, it's not the police, it's the district attorney. And so completely failing to investigate and prosecute the death of a 23-year-old pregnant woman who had been groomed and sexually abused by her now alleged killer is absolutely unconscionable. And we may as well not have a government. It's just a complete failure of government. So that is what, I am strongly of the belief that if you see a problem and you think you can, and you know that you can fix it, that you have an obligation to do it. And so that's why I'm running. I've never run for office before. It wasn't part of the plan, but we can't have this in our backyard.
But you talked about another case or incident that happened. I think I know this is the incident in Braintree that initially sparked your interest.
No, so I was talking about a totally different case that got no attention at all. That was just a case that I had. But the Braintree case is also interesting. So there, another case that really bothered me earlier this spring that was publicized in the Globe was the case of a 12-year-old boy in Braintree whose friends, he was on the spectrum, I think, or neurodivergent in some way. And two of his friends convinced him to take his clothes off, and they took a picture of him. They spread it around at school. Then the boy's father found out and reported it to the police. That turned out that the two boys were the children of Braintree police officers, and they were permitted to interview their own sons. And the detective, of course, worked with the two police officer dads. And so, surprise, surprise, no charges issued. And then when the family went to the DA's office and said, could you do a really impartial investigation, because we're not really sure this was impartial. The DA's office, according to the article, treated them poorly and were unkind, and sent them on their way. And the fact of the matter is, it is a crime. So it's not clear why that ever happened. So yeah, and then of course there's the case of the chair of the Dover Select Board, who was do you know about that one?
I think so.
So that's the one where, so the chair of the Dover Select Board was had his car stolen out of his driveway. In the car were two guns that were that were unsecured, and he left his keys and his checkbook in the driveway. Um, he reports the car stolen. He tells, to his credit, he tells the police that there were two guns in his car. They say, we're going to have to charge you with failure to secure a firearm. And he says, okay. And then a couple weeks later, he goes to the police station because somebody's now using his checks. He wants a status report. The police say, don't know yet. And he threatens them, or, he says something like, I could have your job. So then he gets charged with intimidation of a witness and failure to secure firearms. The day of his arraignment, the case was null prossed, and a null pros is the district attorney's ultimate form of dismissal, like cannot be questioned, and you don't even have to give a reason to do it. In this case, they did, and the reason was it is not in the interest of justice to prosecute this case. I'm paraphrasing here, because the defendant has reached an agreement with the Dover Select Board, and and then it doesn't say what the agreement was, but later that day, the Dover Select Board chair resigned. So, in other words, the rest of us would not have that kind of privilege of just having a criminal problem resolved by losing our jobs. We would also be prosecuted for it. And in this particular case, those guns were never recovered. The car was recovered, but not the guns. So, it's it just really shocks the conscience.
Now, it seems like this is like a pattern in Norfolk County with the selective persecution and the prosecutions. It just seems like it's a favor. It's always a favor. Like, you did something for me, I'm going to do something for you. How do you change that kind of culture? Like, if you're elected DA, how does that change?
I mean, I think you just make it clear from the get-go that is not, it's not going to be the way the game is played anymore. First of all, because it's not a game. These are people's actual lives, whether you're a victim of a crime or a defendant. This is serious stuff, and you can't use criminal penalties to gain favor or to use your power in a way that's wrong. And what I loved about being a prosecutor was that when I was a prosecutor, I was taught that you do the right thing for no other reason than it is the right thing to do. And that's it. And that is the job. And the job is to serve. And so, I think you make that clear that that's what the standards are. And then you follow them. You don't hire people based on political favors. You don't make decisions based on political interests. You do what's right based on the merits of each case as it comes. And you can't be afraid to make the tough decisions, because there will be tough decisions.
Yeah, there will be, definitely. Now, Michael Morrissey's been in office for over 30 years. Do you see yourself, like, let's say you win this election and you defeat Michael Morrissey next year.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see yourself in office for 30 years?
Well, I'd be pretty old if that was true. I mean, I had not really thought about it. Yeah, I would be like 88 if I stayed for 30 years. So something tells me no, I would not stay that long. But I don't know.
Let's talk about
as long as they'll have me, I guess. Let's put it that way.
As long as they'll have you, yeah. There's been some stuff going on with the Karen Reed trial right now. Like, one of the things that has driven me crazy is this no protest zone. They could call them buffer zones.
Mm-hmm.
But it's become much more than that. It's become much more than, like, myself. Like, I've been, like, the last trial, I went to report. This is what I do. I have a show. This is a part of my income comes from this, obviously. I go down there to report, and I got the state police in my face threatening to arrest me on a public sidewalk trying to do my job, because I don't have the papers from the government, because they haven't given me approval. And now they've, like, they basically tackled and beat up this guy who's, like, doesn't look like he has a lot of resources, because he was live streaming on the sidewalk and not moving quickly fast enough for them. It's like, gone beyond protest. It's not even about protest. It's about you're not authorized to be on the sidewalk because I said so.
Mm.
If you were a DA, would that type of stuff be going on? Like,
Well, I mean, I would hope not, because I mean, I do think that community policing is a really important thing to do. Like, police need to have good relationships with the community in order to gain their trust. The judge has a lot of discretion to set the boundaries of the courthouse and set those buffer zones. Um, you know, I'm trying to think what the charge would even be, other than disorderly conduct. But yes, there are, if you're violating the buffer zone, then I guess, that could certainly be a crime, I guess, if it's disorderly conduct. But I'd like to think that there'd be a little bit of understanding, and at least, not a rush to get hostile and confrontational, to
yeah,
be reasonable.
especially when a lot of us, like myself, I'm doing a job. Like I'm trying to work a job, and these cops are telling me I can't do my job. Like that's just because I don't have the correct approval from the court to be on a sidewalk, not even to go in the courthouse. And
Hmm.
I'm not there to protest. You know what I mean? I don't have a protest sign. I'm not doing any chants. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, that's like goes beyond the order. That's the big problem for me. Like, it's one thing if you're gonna do a buffer zone and say no signs, no chants, none of this. But for someone that just try to cover it with a camera, with a
Hmm.
phone, I'm just trying to stream. I'm trying to do my job, and they're in our faces. Like there's been lawsuits now. The journalists have lost. Like it's because we're not certified by the courts. Like I've even created a new website because, I used to write for all these outlets, but I haven't written for them a couple of years. They don't accept a YouTube show, so I haven't even applied because I heard that. But now I
Hmm.
have to have a website. I create a website so I can get approval maybe in a
Oh, I
couple of
see.
weeks. But
So
it's
they
it's
have.
unbelievable what they're doing to us, which it's like telling us who's a journalist and who's not. I have like awards that I won. Like, you know what I mean? Like I don't get it. I don't get how I can win journalism awards. I can do this as a job, make money from it for years now. And
Mhm.
they're not allowing us to go in and film like on the sidewalk.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I, I'm not. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know what the standards are for that, and that's not how. I don't know enough about it, I guess, to make a real pronouncement one way or the other.
Yeah.
Um,
I get it. It's just to me it's wild. That's why I haven't been going down there. Like I'm like I'll go down there when I finally get the court approval. I guess like I'll go through the process, which is it's just crazy. It's wild. Um, you put out a statement about Michael Proctor that
mhm.
we had posted it up online. Can you tell us about what the statement was about? Why you did that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I just thought it was important. The statement was basically saying that, or applauding the fact that Trooper Proctor had been fired from the state police by the new colonel, and that it's really important that police have maintained the highest professional standards and ethical standards so that they're trusted by the community. And I think we put out that statement, or I put out that statement, because I thought it was really important and really true. I think that the community is really upset with what has been going on with the state police, and they're not, obviously in the case of Trooper Proctor, they were correct. And I guess I'll just go one step further. I think one thing I wish was happening was that all of his colleagues who either liked or condoned the texts that he sent them, um, should also be investigated and potentially disciplined for doing those things, because they set the tone too. I mean, if you're in a text, if you're a supervisor and you're in a text chain that involves people who should not be receiving this information, you as the supervisor should go and do something about it. Similarly, if you are the recipient of an inappropriate text from one of your officers, you should be going and doing something about it. So in my mind, the question is, did they? Because if not, um, you know, you'd think that if they had, that something would have happened sooner to Proctor than having it have to. It really was only because of the trial that this all came out, and that he was actually disciplined. But somebody should have been on that sooner.
What do you think the proper discipline for the other people on that text, text
On
chain?
those,
Yeah,
yeah,
what do you think they should? What should have happened to them?
I don't know. It depends. I'd need to know more about, was this a pattern? Was this the first time this ever happened? Was, was Proctor a known problem and they kept ignoring it? Or was this the first time it ever happened? Were they new supervisors? Were they, are there mitigating circumstances that would have an impact, or are there extenuating circumstances that would have an impact? So, I mean, I've done a lot of, because of the investigations I do, I've also talked to a lot of HR people, and, discipline always has to be progressive. You have to have notice. I mean, not legally necessarily, but in terms of fairness. So you want to be fair, even to people you think are ultimately culpable.
Absolutely. Yeah, you gotta have fairness and obviously the process, and they're employees after all. Um, Let me ask you this: how, like, on this subject matter, how, like, if you're the DA, how do you change the culture so it's not like that? That's not the average, expectation in the unit that this is okay. How do you change it? How do you change? You're the DA now. How do you make sure that all these employees that work for you aren't doing stuff like that?
Mm-hmm. I mean, the culture definitely starts from the top. I mean, like I was saying before, when I started out, Scott Harshbarger used to have these quarterly staff meetings where it was all talking about all the amazing work that every different department was doing, and also always stressing. He would literally say, and Ralph said this too, do not ever make a decision based on politics. Don't worry about me. I'm responsible for getting elected. You just do the job, and you do the job, the way you think is best based on your skill and judgment. And, be compassionate and kind, but also hold people accountable for bad behavior. I mean, that was just and you just don't accept anything else besides that. And I think, you have to invest in the people that in your staff. You have to be supportive of your staff, and you have to let them grow. And sometimes they will make mistakes. That's just inevitable. But I think it's like little by little showing that you support them, but you have high expectations, and also you're providing the right training. And whether it's substantive training or anti-bias kind of training, all of those things are important. And then the other piece is building relationships with both the police and with other law enforcement, and also community agencies. I mean, one by one, I will build trust with law enforcement and with community agencies and with staff, and it can take time, but I've seen it work in other settings. So in the work I do for colleges, in campus sexual assault cases, when I first started doing it, the colleges were doing not almost nothing, but they were really not doing a thorough job in investigating and holding people accountable for campus sexual assault. 10 years later, the culture has drastically changed, in partly because of the Me Too movement, but also because of efforts on the part of leadership to make changes and to set the tone. And if you know that you're not going to get in trouble, if you're not necessarily fired if you make a mistake, I think that helps. That really helps people grow. But if you're going to get fired if you do something unethical or or like truly morally wrong, then I think that also sets an important tone.
With this campaign, it you're taking on a longtime incumbent, but he's probably at his weakest he's probably ever been, or in a long time at least. Do you know that he's definitely running for re-election? Has he stated that he's actually running, Michael Morrissey?
He has not, and most people I run into, even people who are who say that they're personal friends of his or have known forever, most people think he will not run again. But I don't know, and he, in my mind, he's running until he isn't.
There's a question from Ask Bob who says, I show it. Why isn't it coming on? Here it is. Ask Bob says, Mike, is she ready for the dirty fight that Morrissey will throw at her? If he runs, do you think it will be dirty? Are you ready for it?
Well, I don't know if it'll be. I don't know if it'll be dirty. I don't know Mike Morrissey at all. But one thing I can say is that I've spent my entire 30-year legal career fighting bullies. I know a bully when I see one, and you know what? Bring it on.
Awesome. And you have. I mean, you've been in some high pressure situations. We were just talking about just going back to Charles Stewart and that whole thing. And this is so much situations you've been into. You mentioned the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. One of our biggest guests, the biggest guest actually, that always comes to the show. He's a friend of ours. He's from Framingham. He's a criminal defense attorney now in New York City. But he started, like, his big thing is he started out where you did, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. He was assistant district attorney. His name's Mark Betterell. You never met him, did you?
No. I'm not sure because I wasn't actually a full-time hire. I was just a summer
Yeah,
clerk.
you do an intern clerking. Yeah.
And
That's awesome, though. I mean, that must have been a pretty good experience because he talks that Manhattan District Attorney's Office up a lot.
It was a great experience, and I was actually in the public integrity division. So that unit, which I asked to be in, because and that was the division that investigated police misconduct and other official misconduct. But yeah, it was fascinating. And also, when I was there, JFK Jr. was an assistant district attorney there.
Wow.
So there was you'd walk down the hall and you'd see him, and there were special security things because he was in the office.
I'm just thinking because I know like back when JFK Jr. was around, he was like the sexiest man alive. Like every year he was on the cover of People. Did you have that thing going where you're like, oh my God, it's JFK Jr. or were you just like, oh, he's just another lawyer, another prosecutor here?
He was good looking, I gotta say.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'm a very straight man, and I could say, yeah, I think I'd even feel like that. Even like, wow, he is very handsome.
I remember thinking. I mean, I was 23 probably then. I remember thinking like, oh come on, what's the big deal? He's a celebrity, whatever. And then one day I was walking down the hall, and there he was, and I was like, oh.
John.
I get it.
Yeah, I'm sure. Pretty wild. It's awesome. Yeah, so you're ready. Here's another question. You may not know, some of these questions may be coming out of left field, but I like to throw them out there from our audience. Here's one. They're asking, wasn't Brian Albert involved in catching the Craigslist killer? Do you even know who Brian Albert is? You know who he is, right?
I do know who Brian Albert is, but I don't know the answer to that question.
Whether I guess he was, but you have you ever met Brian Albert? Do you have any connections to the Albert family? No. Excellent. Okay. So we're answering the questions out of left field. This is what I like. You come to the community. Every time I've asked you come on the show, I see that you talked about, community organizations. You're going out there and campaigning right now.
Yeah.
Where are some of the places you've been, talking to voters and the community organizations? Where are some of the places you've been going?
So it's been, I've actually been surprised at how much fun campaigning is. And that sounds kind of weird, but maybe it doesn't sound weird, but I was surprised by it. There are I can tell you some fun facts about Norfolk County. There are 27 towns in Norfolk County. There are 730,000 people who live here. And that's a lot. Each community is unique, and there are communities with farms in them, and then there's communities like Quincy. So we have this huge range of interests and concerns and and worries that people have. So I've been to probably 15 or so Democratic town committee meetings, which is like a typical thing that Democratic. Somebody's saying JFK Jr. was awesome. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, I was a subscriber to George Magazine back in the day. I don't know if you remember that one.
That's funny.
It was a good magazine.
Magazine. Anyway, so I've probably been to 15 different Democratic town committee meetings, probably a dozen Democratic town caucuses, which is where they choose people to go to the state convention. And you get it, they let candidates speak a little bit. I've also been to things like the Lunar Festival in Quincy and the State of the City in Quincy and the State of the Town address. All over the place. It's been actually super fun. And everybody, and maybe it's because I've found that I've also been on election days. I'll go to town meetings and to town election days to talk to people, and I'm finding that both Democrats and Republicans and independents, everyone is mad about the district attorney's office and what's happening there. I think because everyone at a fundamental level realizes we all deserve justice, no matter who you are, no matter what your party is. And it really, even though, yes, it's technically a political race, it's not a political job. It should not be a political job. And so, I think that's been great.
Absolutely. A great question. We got some good questions coming in. Mac Dickles says, if you were to win the election, would you bring state charges against Matthew Farwell? Would it be appropriate in your opinion?
So, it's a great question because for a couple of reasons. I mean, well, for the obvious reason that, she deserves the community is the community, her community is the group of people that is most invested in her and should have been the ones to speak for her. That said, the feds have indicted Farwell on charges that could lead to the death penalty. Whether or not he's actually sentenced to the death penalty, who knows? But if it's not the death penalty, it would probably be life in prison or something similar. So then you're left with the practical question of what would the point of bringing a state, if he gets convicted and he gets a, let's say, life imprisonment sentence, is there a practical purpose in bringing a state trial for murder? And, I think it's something that I would certainly talk to the family about, because it would mean putting them, because I'm imagining that they may wind up testifying, or at least being in the emotional roller coaster of the federal trial, and they may not want to have another trial. They may not want to testify. They may just, so I think it would take a lot of conversations with the family and also considerations of what really could be gotten out of it. And yeah, so maybe.
Excuse me. Perfect. I have a lot of good questions here, and I'm just trying to put up the right ones right now.
I love the questions.
Yes. Here's one. They were asking about your background. Mac Dickles again.
Mm-hmm.
I said, Judicial represented a victim or victim's family of the Craigslist killer in what capacity?
So when he was first arrested, the family had trouble getting for a couple things. Some of it was just sort of helping them navigate the criminal justice system, and because there was an incredible amount of attention on them. So it was sort of like the Karen Reed case. It was everywhere, and people were constantly media sources were constantly bothering this poor mother who had just lost her eldest daughter. And so some of it was managing that. Some of it was helping them sort of being a liaison between them and the DA's office, because there were issues over possessions of hers that the DA's office had that the family needed to like get into her apartment and her mailbox and stuff like that. So there was, I had to threaten to bring a motion for return of property to get the DA's office to give us the stuff back. And then we also, there was a question about whether after he killed himself, there was a question about whether or not there could be a civil case filed by the family against someone. And so we needed to look at the criminal case file. And so it was representing the family and trying to get that case file back. And then also looking at whether or not anybody could be sued.
Question from Jay Coop, and I really like the end of it more than anything, but I'll read the whole thing. They said, just hopping on, I have a question. Why aren't more lawyers and people speaking out against this persecution against Karen Reed? Why aren't they questioning why a special prosecutor was hired. Can you comment on that whole thing with the special prosecutor and how much? There's a lot of money being spent. This guy's getting very rich on this trial, Hank Brennan.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, when you are a trial lawyer and you are on trial, there is nothing else you can't. I used to say to my husband, like, when I'm on trial, I am not a mother. I am not a wife. This is all I do. This is like, I barely eat. I barely sleep. And I think most trial lawyers are like that. Like, your whole focus. Trials are like the brain surgery for lawyers. You have incredible amount of focus, and I'm sure that Hank Brennan is working 24/7, like as close to 24/7. And so, yeah, I think the expense is huge. And I question whether, is this really for John O'Keefe? Because if this was really about John O'Keefe, in all likelihood, they would have not moved forward on the murder charge and instead moved only on the involuntary manslaughter. It feels more like it's about the district attorney trying to save his reputation, I think that's concerning, especially since the whole DA's budget is, let me look at I have a little cheat sheet here. The whole district attorney's budget is $14 million. Of that,
Wow.
11.3 million is salaries. Okay, that makes sense. So that means that they only have $2.7 million for everything else. That's like the rent, the lights, if they have cars, if they, all the, the office supplies, whatever. And also case expenses. So you have to pick and choose which cases you're going to put that limited budget into. And I looked, and in 2024, Norfolk County had 500 Superior Court cases. So let's think about those as like the most serious cases. And you're putting, I think Hank's rate is like $250 an hour or something, and he's putting countless hours into it. If you're putting all that money into the retrial of Karen Read, what else are you not putting your money into? What other cases are suffering because of that? And I'm not saying that the first trial, you have to put, it's a homicide case, you have to put serious resources into that. Not saying that. But I think at this point, the question, most of the time after a mistrial, you have serious conversations with your staff about what you can prove or not, and you try to make a deal with the other side. Now, maybe that happened and we just don't know about it because that would be a private conversation that would not be public. But if not, then, or maybe they did and she rejected it. I don't know. But if this is just a decision based on ego, that is, again, unconscionable, because that's not serving the public. That's serving the district attorney. It's not serving the public or the family of John O'Keefe.
Yeah. Because you talked about the different charges too, because there's been some questions that come in about the upcharging. How do you use that? And do you use it when a defendant turns down a plea? Because there's a lot of feeling that they offered her a plea and she didn't take it at the very beginning, and that's when they upcharged her. How do you use that? Like, is that how does that? What's the ethics, I guess, on upcharging? Because it seems like a lot of times they overcharge and upcharge to make you take a plea, to basically punish you for making the job harder for them to prosecute you. How would you deal with that?
No, you first of all, the prosecutor's obligation is only to bring charges that they have a good faith belief that they have, sufficient admissible evidence that they will meet the burden of proof of beyond a reasonable doubt, which is, as we know, an incredibly high standard. And so, no, you can't. You either have a good faith belief that you have the ability to prove it, or you don't. And so you can't. You should not be using upcharging as punishment in any way. It's one thing to charge high at the beginning because you do have that good faith belief, and then as things go on, maybe the evidence doesn't look as good as you thought it did at the beginning, and then to reduce it, or something else happens, like the family really does not want to testify and you absolutely need or somebody is unavailable to testify who you really need to testify. And so now your case is weakened. And so now you offer a discount off the top. But no, it should never be the other way around. I'm not sure if there's maybe there's a miscommunication in the way that it first went down. But one thing I wanted to say that sort of goes back to the previous question too is that the worst thing in the world you can do to the family of a crime victim is give them false hope. You should never be telling them, we can get you a murder conviction, when you're pretty sure, when the likelihood of that is fairly slim. And in this case, the likelihood of a murder conviction from the outset it's very murky. I actually thought Hank did. I watched the openings, and that's all I've done. And I thought Hank Brennan actually made it much clearer why they are doing the murder case, the murder charge, and what the theory is. But I think that the instruction, it still doesn't make any sense given the level of intoxication they think she had, because intoxication is contradicts intent. So so I still think it was a bad decision, and it makes me question Hank's independence as a special prosecutor, because I think that most prosecutors that I know would not have proceeded on that murder charge in the beginning or now.
I have to think that's true. I mean, that's what I hear too, all the time from local attorneys they felt like it was an overcharge.
So I mean, and when you give a family that false hope, they're sitting there it's only going to crash if it doesn't work out the way. If you cannot fulfill the promise, then they're crushed at the end. And the lawyer's job is not to tell you what you want to hear. The lawyer's job is to tell you what you need to know. And if you cannot make this case, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not true, that what happened is true. It's whether you can meet the burden of proof. And
whether you can prove it.
Right. So it's a horrible thing. I mean, and I've seen it in other situations, and it's just, it can wreck the family.
My father's keeper says, does Djuna believe in the Constitution and our constitutional rights, including freedom of the press, not needing government approval in order to report on an important public interest?
So I think maybe this writer is going back to your previous question about the buffer zones and the media passes. Definitely, yes, I believe in the Constitution and our constitutional rights. And in fact, on May 1st is Law Day, and the Mass Bar Association is holding an event on the Common where all lawyers in Massachusetts are invited to go and retake our oath to support the Constitution. So yes, and including freedom of the press, yes. The not needing government approval part in order to report on important public interest, I think that's the media pass thing. Maybe he's talking about.
That's what they're talking about.
I just don't know enough about what the rules are around media passes and what control the courts can or can't have to make an intelligent comment about that.
This is a question that you probably don't, like you said, you haven't been watching the whole trial. But Violent Lilac is asking if Ms. Perkins won, would she be able to look at the Reed case herself, and would she consider charging Kerry for perjury? One of the witnesses seems to have changed her story recently that testified in this retrial. I'll just ask you in general, because I know you don't know all the details. Mm-hmm. How seriously is perjury as a charge? Like, it seems like it doesn't actually get prosecuted often, does it?
No, and the reason is because it's really hard to prove, because you have to prove that somebody was intentionally lying. And honest to God, I mean, working on thousands of cases, most people, when they tell you their version of events, think they're telling the truth. So how do you prove that they're intentionally lying? It's not easy. And so that's why there's often ways to say, like, well, that's not what I meant. What I meant was, maybe that word came out of my mouth, but what I meant was X. Or there's so many different ways to wiggle out of it, and it's tough to meet the beyond a reasonable doubt standard for perjury.
That's a good answer, Judna, because that's basically what happened on the stand. Like, she had an explanation, but
right.
Just a lot of us don't really believe it, but right. Yeah, I mean, it's interpretation. That's really what it comes down to, and it's tough to know what's in her head.
Right, exactly. Which is why, I mean, there's very few crimes that actually require specific intent. Murder is one of them, for obvious reasons, because it's so tough to prove what's in somebody else's head.
Here's another one for Mac Dickles. Any thoughts from Djuna on the current witness intimidation law and how much it needs to be tightened up or reeled in, if any? I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it seems like our law is way overboard in the state compared to other states. It just penalizes things beyond. What do you think?
What I remember about the witness intimidation law is that it's actually, I think, called obstruction of justice, and it's vague. I mean, it
Very
sorts,
vague.
it can be a catch-all. I think that's to provide the government the maximum amount of discretion in deciding what witness intimidation is or isn't. On the other hand, to prove witness intimidation is also, you gotta, I think from a common sense point of view, you have to prove that there was actual intimidation and that it's not, there's a difference between intimidation and free speech. And, you know, those are, they are two different things. Sometimes free speech can cross the line. No question. There's a crime called criminal harassment where if you engage in a purposeful pattern that is designed to cause emotional distress to somebody else, and it doesn't have to be anything physical. It could be words. It could be showing up at somebody's, workplace. If you're doing that and that's a pattern, that could be, that's a crime. So words can be a crime, but simply stating your opinion about something is not a crime.
It's interesting because some of the witnesses in the Karen Reed trial tried to get harassment prevention orders against Aiden Carney, and they failed. They failed to even get the civil
Mm.
HPO against them. And then, not soon after, Norfolk County charged him with witness intimidation. And like a lot of it is just when you look at it, it's because a lot of us saw it. Like some of the stuff he did, he would call like one of the witnesses on the phone to ask them for comment. This kid Colin, and he would like imitate Colin. He was doing an imitation of Colin, repeating Colin's ridiculous words Colin said.
Mhm.
And they said that because Colin's words are, kind of thuggish, let's just put it that way. They said that Aiden was threatening this guy Colin.
Mhm.
Like he was he was basically doing an imitation of Colin. And like and they also charged Aiden, this guy, he's a reporter, he's got a website. He is who he is, Turtle Boy. Some people think he's over the line, profane, but he does journalism. He's broken a lot of stories too. And they're saying he intimidated the state police. Like that to me is just like I don't can do you think someone like a even a loudmouth is going to intimidate the state police? Like Michael Proctor got intimidated and
Right. I find it hard to believe that 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 the state police would be intimidated by somebody like Turtle Boy, somebody like Aiden.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it's different. Maybe if you're a kid, and but generally the rule is like you can say something. You can contact somebody one time and say, "Hi, I'm cold calling you out of the blue, and I want to ask you some questions or I want to talk to you or whatever." If they
yeah.
say to you, "Do not call me again," if you call them again, that's harassing. But if you stop calling them, it's not harassment. So it's kind of like you get one freebie.
Free shot.
Right, one free shot, and that's it. I mean, you still can't say, "I'm going to kill you," or "I'm going to harm you," or
Yeah.
"I'm going to hurt your dog,"
Yeah,
or
you can't those are fighting
do
words.
that.
Can't do
Right.
that.
Um, and the closer you get to physical contact or physical threats, the more likely it is to be found to be witness intimidation.
Yeah. It's because, at one point this snitch, there was a snitch that this woman that's been, basically she started out as a someone that was working for Aiden way back. And they had a falling out and she's become his biggest harasser. And she basically has been trying to get him locked up for years. Now she has witness intimidation charges against her. But about a year and a half ago, there was some stuff that happened with Aiden, and there was some audio, and I heard the audio, and I reported on the audio, and this woman basically came at me and was threatening me that I was going to jail for witness intimidation for reporting on the audio and what I heard related to Aiden's personal life that became very newsworthy at the time. And they were basically threatening me with Brian Tully, that if I didn't go to talk to Brian Tully, that I was, and this was right when they locked up Aiden for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
and they threatened to lock me up. They were going to lock me up if I didn't call Brian Tully. And I basically had a little bit of a nervous breakdown. I did, because I was starting to shit myself. And so I took a break. I even like kind of like said, I don't know, I'm questioning things and all this other crap, just to buy myself some time so I could get a criminal defense attorney,
Mm-hmm.
some mental health, so I could talk to a counselor and just calm the hell down. And 30 days later, I had it all lined up, and I came back, and I basically called their bluff too. I found out a lot about what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that woman was weaponized. They want to shut me down. They want to shut me down, and they wanted me to roll over in Aiden. And then they started sending all these state troopers going out to harass these women, young women, older women, grandmas, anyone that posted a comment that the witnesses didn't like,
Mm.
and basically try to say, if you don't talk to us, we're throwing you in jail next unless you tell us Aiden told you to do it. And all of them said, Aiden didn't tell me to do it. I just did it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, this is the stuff that they did to me and other people. And it's like, to me, it's wild how they weaponized it to try to shut down any conversation about the misdeeds of the Massachusetts State Police, this DA's office. And it's interesting the fact that they, want to talk about witness intimidation and intimidation. I was intimidated. I was, when
Right.
men in guns threatened to come to your house and arrest you. So like and Aiden talked about the every time he sees the black SUVs, he's always worried that they're coming for him again. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he's been intimidated because of his press, and
Mm-hmm.
that he was reporting on Brian Tully, on Michael Proctor, Buchanan, and Michael Morrissey. They decided to seek revenge against him. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's like a pattern with this DA's office.
Yeah, I mean, part of it's like, if only you were using your resources to investigate cases instead of trying to defend your position, which is what it feels like. It's less about a search for the truth than it is about protecting, closing ranks and protecting something, and that doesn't feel good for anybody. I mean, I will also say that I think that police interactions can be intimidating for a lot of people. Like, I've been pulled over, and I remember this time that I got pulled over, and the state trooper was screaming at me for doing something that I really was not my fault. He said I drove through a hearse, a funeral procession, but we were in a rotary. There was no way for me to see that the procession was coming from where I was. Anyway, the point is, it was a very negative experience for me. I was shaking in my boots, and I thought to myself, if this is difficult for the nice looking white lady in the suit jacket, what is it like for people who are a person of color, who are, maybe had a negative experience with the police before? And I really feel like that's why community policing is important. Knowing who your local police are and having regular interactions with them so that they know who you are, and they know, like, you're a decent person. You're not trying to break any laws or whatever. I think that makes things much smoother. And then also, de-escalation trainings are huge and really important, and more police departments are using those, or using those kinds of trainings. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, There's a follow up on some of this. Fan of the Truth said, "You do understand that Turtle Boy, Duck King, Canton Nine, the older ladies visited by Mass State Police were witness intimidators." I mean, I don't feel like any of them were. The Canton Nine specifically, all they did was hold up signs outside of an elected select board member's business. I mean, I don't know.
So I don't have enough inside knowledge to know one way or the other, but I mean, that's why due process is important. That's what, like, no one should should jump to conclusions immediately and immediately, punish or prosecute somebody based on, without them getting some due process, meaning a hearing, representation, notice, all that stuff. Yeah, we can't rush to judgment.
Michelle W says she wants to know if you're running in Norfolk County. You are for DA, right?
Yes.
Because
Yes,
she lives there.
I'm running for Norfolk County DA, and it's a primary. It will be a primary in September of 2026.
Excellent. And she wants me to ask Nick Rocco's question, but I can't find it. I'm looking for it among all the other questions.
Oh.
Why don't you? Can Nick or Michelle just post Nick's question? I can post it up there. I love Nick Rocco. I'd love to answer his question. Let's check out some other questions then until we find that one. Here's something that came in. Carrie, she says, here's an awesome slogan. Judicial justice. Vote for Perkins.
So
Judicial justice. I like that.
Actually, I'm looking for my button, which is not, but if you go to my website, you will see that my slogan is Djuna for Justice.
That's right. I could share that right now too.
Yeah.
Djuna for Justice.
Yes.
Djuna Perkins.
Oh, here it is.
.com is the website.
Yes. Here it is.
I got it right. There you go.
Hold it right for the camera. Okay.
I got it on the screen too. There you go. This is the website. Make sure you check out the website tonight. Do you have an email list on there as well? I know you have a Facebook page. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. You can sign up to volunteer or to get emails. I think that get involved button, and also has the social media links and the donate button.
And people should donate. I know last time we had a number of people I saw there in the chat. They were donating to you. Did you notice? Did you see any donations coming in last time you were on the show?
Yeah, there were some. I mean, one thing I think that has been a surprise to me is that the vast majority of campaign, like the reason that candidates have to raise so much money is that mailings in a big county like Norfolk County, the typical thing is to send a certain number of print mailers, and they cost a fortune. And so that's the vast majority of campaign spending. It's not for parties or for fun stuff. It's actually to pay for these mailings, which I want to say cost like $40,000 each, maybe. I think I'm right about that. But it's a lot. And so that's what, to get to 730,000 people, that's what it takes.
So hopefully people kick in, donate. It's top right corner, Djuna Perkins. Actually, let me get right. Yeah, JunaPerkins.com website.
Yes.
And we'll get that posted in the chat tonight too, for people.
Did Nick Rocco's question get posted?
I'm looking for it. There's some other questions too, but I'm looking for Nick's. We'll see if we can find Nick's. Here's one that came in. We'll ask this one. Erica M says, would Djuna comment to providing forensically sound evidence with metadata by default on all digital evidence? We saw this become a big issue in the Karen Reed case. They wouldn't give them the metadata on this video.
I can't imagine that the judge wouldn't have compelled them.
I know. He didn't, which is a lot of strange things in this. It's funny because we're watching all these other court cases in Norfolk County. A lot of them about the witness intimidation, a lot with Aiden, a lot of these other people. And we're all like, we're watching the different judges and we're like, wow, these judges are fair. Wow, isn't this refreshing? Because this Bev Canoni, she does things that we can't believe it. And it's not just like the average person like myself, like that doesn't know legal stuff. Like, we're having major attorneys on the show and they're like, she's going to throw down the gauntlet tomorrow. And she doesn't. She just lets this prosecution continue to get away with stuff that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, that surprises. I'd be surprised that they wouldn't be compelled. I'm surprised that they weren't compelled to provide metadata, or that wouldn't be an assumed obligation. So I think the answer is yes.
Yeah. We were surprised by it too. Like we're just like, but she does like the thing that you expect her to do. It's surprising to us. It does happen sometimes, but here's a question. Mac Dickles, he's got a lot of questions. Would Juna be receptive to hosting meatball supper campaign fundraisers?
Okay, that sounds mean. I try not to be mean.
I like you. I like you. They do. He's got a nickname. They call him Meatball Morrissey now. It
I
is kind of mean. It is.
know. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, there's enough to criticize
Yeah.
without being mean. You can
Yep.
just, and I always feel like whenever people criticize people's appearances or things like that, I'm like, what, actually, as a prosecutor, when a defense attorney started on that kind of stuff, it was a sign that they had nothing else. And so, I'd rather just go for the substance, and because that's way more than we need.
Exactly. This is the next question. It was a good one. I knew it would be a good one. It's one I should have thought of earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Nick Rocco is a big supporter of Karen Reed, a friend of hers. He says he wants to know if you would retry Karen if this retrial is hung again.
Um, that is a great question. I probably still wouldn't be elected by the time that decision was being made, um, but I I highly doubt it, because I feel like the other thing that is, there's a huge community value in closure, and even if the closure ultimately is not justice, sometimes we just have to move on, and it's painful and it's not fair, but yeah, at a certain point you call it. I think I might have, I can't remember if I told this story before, but I once had a case that was a horrible case involving a man who raped his stepdaughter, and the first, it ended in a mistrial in the first one because the one of the witnesses disrupted the courtroom, and so it was a mistrial. So then we go again, and this time it's a hung jury, and so then I decide to retry it because it was a horrible case. And then my boss came and said, "Okay, if this one is a hung jury, that's it. It's over. We're just, we're just dismissing it, even though that would be crushing for the family." So, fortunately, it didn't turn out that way. There was a conviction on that one, but but the point really is, at a certain point, you just have to close the books on it, and so that everyone can move on and try to do it better next time.
In that case, would you? I'm guessing you don't tell the family, or do you tell the family? Like you just keep your mouth shut about that and just hope for the best.
What do you mean about
Like
not
in
trying?
terms, yeah, that if you lose this, it's over.
Oh, of course. Well, you wouldn't necessarily tell them now, but yeah, no, you definitely bring them in and talk about it with them. They, and of course they would be upset. It would, it's incredibly upsetting. But I think, honestly, the reason that we are the way where we are right now is because of mistakes made by the district attorney. And if it weren't for those mistakes, we might not be here now. And that, so I believe that the reason there's been so much controversy and so much pain for the O'Keefe family is because of mistakes made by the DA's office.
Uh, yes. I got it's comment from Leah Baker. She says, "Speaking for myself, I don't read mailers, save the money, and get public attention through social media like this." I'm gonna say to Leah, you got to do everything. Like
Yes.
some people only do in-person events. Some people only read the mailers. Some people only do the social media. So you have to go where people are, and as many places. Right? Is that right, Juna?
Yes, yes. I mean, that's why you see, when you watch presidential candidates or senatorial candidates, whatever, like everywhere, that's why. And young people are on social media more than older people, and yeah, and some people want to want to have something they can refer back to on election day. So,
Exactly. Sometimes it's a reminder too. It's like, who am I voting for?
right, right.
It's like because you're just learning about these people, and sometimes
Right.
you're not really sure.
In my house, we like, as we before we go over to the polling place, we're all talking to each other like, wait, who are we supposed to vote for?
Yeah,
On
exactly. We're writing it down, making a list. I mean,
Let me call my
yeah,
kid. Do you know anything about this person? Yeah.
yeah. And then you vote, and and then you get the phone call back, and you're like, "Oh my god, I should have voted for that one."
Right.
Like
Right.
you kick yourself because you should have waited 10 more minutes to hear the real news.
Right. My favorite in Massachusetts is the town meeting thing where you're like, okay, vote for 13 people. I'm like, well, I
Yes, or all
13
these
of these
questions.
30 people. Yes. And then
Yeah,
and then people are voting on like, okay, well, he lives on that street and I know that street. So all right. Yeah. I mean, we don't all make educated decisions.
it's hard. I mean,
It
it's
is.
hard to have all the time to do this. Do your best. Judah, what is one message you have for your constituents?
Wow, what a great wind up, what a great wind up question. One message that I have for my constituents is that I think, I've spent my I became a lawyer to rectify injustice and to speak for people whose voices otherwise would not be heard. I've spent my entire career doing just that. I'm a public servant at heart, and I think that no one is above the law, and that everyone deserves justice, no matter who they are, and that justice is not black and white. It isn't. It's new. Every case is different, and every case needs to be looked at on its own unique merits, and that's how we get real justice.
We mentioned this earlier, but Sandy wanted, I think, to know more details about it. What do you think about Michael Morrissey speaking on that video?
I think it was completely inappropriate, and the reason is because a district attorney a prosecutor is never supposed to make a statement that could significantly prejudice a defendant, and that's exactly what this video did. Because in the video he was talking about the evidence and how sort of making arguments about the evidence. He also talked about Trooper Proctor and how credible he thought Trooper Proctor was, and this was before the rest of us knew about the text messages and other behavior of his. But you're not supposed to, vouching for the credibility of a witness is definitely going to, could certainly materially prejudice the jury pool, and so that is why you're not supposed to do it. So no, I think it was completely inappropriate.
We have a question from Scott, one of our moderators here. He's someone who does a lot of standouts for Karen Reed.
Mm-hmm.
He says, would Djuna go forward with a case where the feds are saying, stop, what are you doing?
I think that depends on what the case is. And I think relations with the federal government now are going to be very different than they have been in the past. As we saw for a couple weeks ago in Boston, there was this case where an ICE agent plucked a defendant out of the courtroom in the middle of his trial. And so, they weren't saying stop the trial. They weren't saying what the questioner said, but they literally stopped the trial. And what disturbs me about that, and about the feds saying anything to us, is that this is our community and we have a right to hold people accountable for the bad things that they do. And if that right is taken from us, that is completely wrong. And in the past, what would happen is the state authorities, and if there was a case that both the state and the feds were looking at, they would talk to each other, and whoever's case was more serious would go first and the other one would wait. But it was just a conversation, and now it's not clear what's going to happen, because what happened in that case in Boston was, by removing that guy, the judge dismissed the case, which means that if for some reason this man gets released from custody and comes back to Massachusetts, whether legally or illegally or whatever, and is picked up again, there will be no record that he had an outstanding case that was never resolved. And that is unfair to the people of Massachusetts, because we have a right to manage cases that happen on our turf. And also that's why the Sandra Birchmore situation is so disturbing, because the feds are no substitute for state law enforcement, and because this is our backyard.
Just going through some of the questions. We get some great questions here. One, I missed it, but I saw it. I'm just going to read it. I feel bad because I want to give the person credit because it's such a good question. They want to know if you have any personal emails that are embarrassing, like cheesy banana.
I don't know what cheesy banana is.
That's actually Michael Morrissey's email address that he used to contact
No.
judges,
Oh.
ex parte, apparently.
So wait, I'm sorry. What was do I have an embarrassing personal email
Like
address?
cheesy banana, yeah. Like
No.
cheesy banana at yahoo.com, anything like that?
No. No.
That's such a good question. Like,
Pretty straight.
did you hear about that? That he actually was messaging
Yes.
judges with his personal email. What do you think about that?
Totally wrong.
And
Because,
there was a cheesy banana email on top of it.
oh, totally wrong. I mean, to make an end run around the the Public Records Act is wildly inappropriate. Yeah. So
Absolutely. And embarrassing too when it turns out that your email is cheesy banana.
yes.
Oh, what that's all about. I don't even want to think about it. Here's one that's not about Karen Reed, which I like. Kenneth Boston asks, do you have any new ideas to address the fentanyl, I can't even say that word, the
Fentanyl. Yeah.
opiate crisis? What do you think about it's affecting all the communities? How do you
Mhm.
deal with that?
I mean, I think there are some really effective programs in the community already. I know there's a lot of community agencies in Norfolk County that help with substance disorder, and there's a lot of you know um, diversions for drug programs and things like that. Almost even without any kind of specialized court system or anything, most judges and definitely prosecutors are well aware of how much drug use affects crime, or how many crimes arise out of drug use. I mean, when I was in the narcotics unit in the AG's office, the goal was always to try to, you arrest the small fish to see if he'll turn against the bigger fish and the bigger fish and the bigger fish, and you try to do that. But I think mostly it's trying to get people not to need to use, not to want to use, and to get them into programs that help them turn things around.
KK has a question. Would she be willing to reopen the investigation into what actually happened to Officer John O'Keefe?
So once the I'm trying to think. I think once the trial it depends. I guess if there's some new evidence that hasn't been addressed before or seen before, then maybe it's worth looking into. But as I said before, I think once this trial is over, I think it might be in the better interest to just move on.
Tough. A lot of us, feel like that there are people sitting right there that they need the pressure put on them. It's a tough one.
Yeah,
Let's go
you
to
know,
this one. Would you keep the same Massachusetts State Police assigned to the DA's office? If so, why not?
I would not. I think right now they have a new commander in that unit, which is great. But I still think that they all should probably be changed. I'm not saying that they're unqualified or bad or anything like that. I just think it needs for the community to build trust again. It has to be a whole new slate.
Now, the last time you came on, we talked about campaign contributions. Michael Morrissey takes campaign
Mm-hmm.
contributions from his underlings, his employees.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think you said you would not, right?
Correct. I think that when you do that, it's like that's where the slippery slope begins of um, not holding people to standards based on merit, but based on what they contributed. I know some DA's offices where they were expected where their raise each year was based on what they had contributed, and and everybody knew it, and so you'd give a contribution and then you get your raise. But if you didn't give your contribution, you wouldn't get a raise. And I think that's completely bonkers.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just run your office politically for money, pay to play. It's like
Right.
the
That, I mean,
worst.
that is not the job. The job is to keep the community safe and to try to seek justice and find the truth for everybody.
Now, Mr. Monk's understudy, he's asking about jury tampering. There's been some allegations. Aiden Carney broke a story about some potential jury tampering, again, with the Mass State Police involved.
Hmm.
How do you look into something? Would you ever like look into that after the fact if you thought the information was good?
Yeah. I mean, any credible information about a crime should be followed up on. I mean, that's just simple. I haven't heard about the jury tampering thing though.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Isn't it all in this case? Why is it all so
Yeah,
wild?
yeah. I mean, one of the jurors is now on the Karen Reed defense.
Yes, that is interesting.
I mean, it's funny because like ever since this first trial ended, we haven't stopped hearing about the jury,
Hmm.
like about the jury verdict,
Hmm.
and then you got jury interviews. The jurors are doing interviews, and then Karen Reed picks up one of the jurors as an attorney,
Hmm.
and then the story comes out from Aiden, and there's been like rumors about this Fanning state police guy, and then Aiden comes out with the story, and it's basically this juror who got kicked off the jury, and she's telling her story. It's pretty, again, connected cops. It's like cops are always different cops covered for different cops. It's you should check that out. Turtle Boy Daily News, TB Daily News. Got to be interested to see where
Wow.
that goes. That one goes.
Yeah, I mean, that's why, I don't know if you know this, but lawyers are not allowed to speak to jurors before the case, during the case, after the case, never. And so that's why, jurors can come out and start saying stuff. But the reason is because you don't want to, you can't interfere with the deliberations of the jury, because the more you do that, the more everyone is like, well, wait, why did you make that decision? And why did you make that? So the people lose confidence in the decisions that the jury makes. But you can't stop jurors from talking themselves.
Bobby Alessi Slice says, "Thank you for hosting this. My concern is the same old at Mass. How do we ensure change?"
Elect me, of course.
As I say, like I feel like I feel like I get it, Bobby. I get how you can have that kind of, because I get that way too. But at the same time, when elections happen and people vote, change can happen. I mean, we're seeing it. We've already seen it in Canton. I mean, look,
Right.
the police chief she retired because how
Right.
people voted.
I mean, and
So
let
go
me
ahead.
tell you that Canton, when I went to the Canton caucus, they were on fire. It was the day after the election of Sue Harrington, and it was, she won 2/3 of the vote. And yeah, so yes, I think that there's definitely an energy that is going around that's different than it's been before. Um, and I also think that, some people ask, like, well, can't the attorney general's office do something about the district attorney? Can't the governor do something about the district? No, the answer is no. The only remedy is elections. So if you want change, you have to vote, and you have to vote for the candidate that you can trust. I mean, the district attorney has a huge amount of discretion, and one decision made by the DA's office can change a family's life forever. And, whether you're a crime victim who learns that, oh no, I'm not going to be able to get justice in my case, or you're a defendant who learns that, oh my God, I might go to jail. Those are huge decisions. Many crimes can be charged several different ways, and depending on how the DA feels like, what the seriousness of what the DA thinks it is. And so it's really important that you choose somebody that not only has the professional experience, but also the life experience and the judgment and that you can trust in those moments, because there's lots of moments where the DA can't tell you what's going on. And so in those moments, you have to be able to trust who you trust, the person, at the who's the leader. So that's why elections are important, and that's how you make change.
Oh, you mentioned Susan Harrington, first-time candidate, a veterinarian.
Yeah.
Defeat a 30-year plus incumbent who never loses. Similar type of race, like a really solid, woman candidate, professional. What I like is that we have good candidates. Like in that election, there was a good choice. Like you had a
Mm-hmm.
choice. Oftentimes in elections, there's no one running against the incumbent. That's probably, and when you do have a campaign against the incumbent, usually it's not serious. It's not someone who
Mm-hmm.
has the experience like you do. Like you went through your resume. It is so impressive, the work you done. So it's just like you don't get a lot of opportunities, people, to vote for a campaign like this. I hope people really support it. Djuna Perkins, we gotta get her elected. That's big.
That's the thing, is that people sometimes think of government as a monolith, like this kind of anonymous force. But the truth is that the government is just us. And it's individual people who are running for school committee who are like, I care about schools. That's a good idea. I should go try to help out. And it's people like me sitting in my office, perfectly happy doing my own thing. But sometimes you look out the window and you say to yourself, what the hell is going on out there? Like, I got to go do something. And we all have a civic obligation to do what we can. And if the thing that you can do is vote, then you better get your ass to the polls.
Like, I hope people vote, and if you can, throw a donation in. Throw some donor money at Djuna tonight. Or
you're so good at asking that for me.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna pin that in the chat in a minute.
I still have a hard time self-promoting, so
yeah. Well, we can do it for you. And people liking this. I'm so glad that you're here again to answer all these questions. Like, we've been asking so many questions tonight. Some are out of left field. I love it. Like, I'm trying to figure out what this one even means. Well, actually, that's not the one I want to post. Actually, but we'll go with it. They're saying, why wouldn't Attorney Perkins consider opening a cold case regarding Officer John O'Keefe due to there never being an investigation?
So it's not that I wouldn't consider it. I didn't say that. But I'm just, it would take a balance. You'd really have to balance the potential benefit to come out of it, putting the family through it again, versus the benefit of just the whole community kind of moving on. That said, if somebody in prison confesses 2 years from now, who we've never heard of before, suddenly says, you know what, actually I was at the party that night and I did, kill him, or, there's some kind of evidence like that. That's a different story. I don't know, but it's a hard question to answer without a specific reason to reinvestigate, or, new evidence to reinvestigate.
Question for Reality Check. Reality Check. Djuna hasn't watched all the trials, so I'm not sure she knows about these videos that have been playing. But I appreciate the question. It is kind of weird. I could kind of explain it to you, but they've been playing videos from Karen Reed where she's given interviews to the press, and they just play like a 5-second clip. It's weird to me that they just allow that. They just said, like, throw her 5 seconds out, no context of it. They just play it, and then they move on to a witness.
Well, that might. But is somebody authenticating it? I mean,
well, it is her. She's in the media, right. Like, she's on 2020 or whatever.
Right.
And she probably shouldn't have given those interviews, but that's what's going on.
And then that makes you question the advice she was getting, or whether she was listening to the advice. I mean, that's often a problem. Lawyers can give you perfectly good advice, and you don't want to listen if you're a client. I'm not saying that's what's happening, but I've had clients who don't want to listen. But whatever the video was that was shown, probably, I have to think, was discussed in a motion, it was called a motion in limine prior to trial, like to talk about what would go in or what not. And if the defense thought that those things were taken out of context, they would either have asked the judge to make sure there was more context in it, or on redirect, they would put the rest of the context in, or find a way to put some of that context in. Yeah. I have to think they talked about that in the motions in limine, but I don't know for sure.
Does ask this question for Mr. Monk's understudy. He says, how would Djuna or anyone not connected be able to deal with all the corruption around here? Who would she have supporting her? Look at how far the McAlberts go to keep power.
So, I mean, I think that's a great question. I'm lucky that I'm still in touch with many of my former colleagues, some of whom are current elected district attorneys, and current or former elected district attorneys, or people who are on the on executive staffs. And so I do have a lot of colleagues that I can go to for support. And then second to that, as I said before, I think there is a tremendous energy, especially in Canton right now, for change, and I've seen it in other cities too. I mean, towns too. Braintree has a new mayor, a fairly new mayor, who was not a politician before, and she was, I think, a civil engineer, and she just was concerned about the community and wound up running for mayor, and she won. And that 5 years ago, I don't know that would have ever happened. So I think people are looking for professionals who are apolitical to do the jobs that give services to the community. And so I feel hopeful and optimistic that that there will be support both in the community and also around me professionally.
We talked about Susan Harrington winning and the new mayor of Braintree. Are you talking to them or even their campaigns about, like, getting any kind of feedback or advice on how they won their campaigns?
Yeah, to some extent, definitely. I'm meeting with as many elected officials as I can, as many politically active community members as I can. Sometimes it's school committee members, select board members, people running for a library trustee, because those tend to be people who really care about the community too. Yeah, and I meet for coffee with people, have lunch, all those things. It's really fun. And it's really interesting to see the world from this point of view. And how, truly, there are a lot of people who really do care about good government and being good public servants, and believe that we can do better. And that's great. That's the way government should be.
Oh, this question that just popped up here. I feel like I'm reading a lot of questions from Mac Dickles, but he's got the good ones. Says, has Djuna been following any of the developments or lack of developments of the Enrique Delgado Garcia investigation, and any thoughts on what's taken so long?
Mm-hmm.
This is, it's not in Norfolk County, it's Middlesex, but do you have any thoughts on that?
So Dave Meyer was, who's doing the investigation, was the head of homicide when I was in the Suffolk DA's office. So I do know him well. He's a really good lawyer. I'm sure he's doing a very thorough job. He is definitely not somebody I would have said is political at all. This is a pick of a professional. And I imagine that it is taking a long time because it's complex for whatever reason. I mean, we don't know what we know the obvious, what the final moment, because that was what was in the paper, but we don't know how far back he's looking, at, like, how did it get to this point? So yeah, an update would be nice, even if it was just to say we're still working on it. And also, I'm sure that there are many eyes on this, even if it's maybe the report, for all we know, is complete right now, and there's all kinds of people in the executive staff who are looking at it, asking more questions. So it's an investigation that you want to get right. Fast is not always better. I mean, you don't want it swept under the rug. You don't want it to take 1,000 years, but you want to do it right. And so that's okay. So if it takes a long time, then it takes a long time. Oh, thanks. Stay pause.
Yes.
I
A
do
couple
have.
questions
Yes, go
came
ahead.
in too from Teresa and Leah. They want to know what if you're on Facebook and Twitter as well.
So I am on Facebook. It's I believe it's Djuna Perkins for DA. Yes, definitely. Please follow. Please like all that stuff. And Instagram is also it's Facebook and Instagram is more where I am. I am on Twitter. I can't. I think it's also Instagram is definitely Djuna Perkins for DA. I'm on Twitter as well, but I can't remember what the handle is there. Might just be my name.
You can find it. You could find your account on Twitter if they go to the Young Jurks because we
Oh
shared
yes,
it tonight. So
right.
definitely could check it out there on Twitter.
I'm not as social media
Oh yeah,
savvy as I should be, as my children are, of course.
I'm gonna post the Facebook page too, so people have that in the YouTube chat right now, so people can find that. Yeah, I hope everyone should follow you on all those social media sites. That helps a lot.
Definitely, it really does.
Couple more. I think we got most of the questions. I don't know if there's one we got because we do have a lot of out of state people. Day pause says, "What can an out of state person do to support you?"
You can donate. That's for sure. Any U.S. citizen, even if you live abroad, if you are a U.S. citizen, you can donate. And I think actually also if you are a legal permanent resident, you can also donate. And there is an Act Blue. There's a button on the website. There's an Act Blue account. You can also, if you know people in Massachusetts who live in Norfolk County, you can also tell them. There's, like I said, there's 27 different towns. The big ones are Quincy, Braintree, Brookline, Needham, Wellesley, Dedham, Franklin, Foxborough, Sharon, Stoughton, or Weymouth. Sorry, that's a big one too. I'm looking at a map. I have a map up on my wall of all the towns.
Perfect. And I just want to note Sarah in Shock and Horror, one of our moderators, just posted all your social media up there. We pinned it
Oh,
in the
thank you.
chat so people can find it and follow all those accounts. We also had a question: are you on Blue Sky?
I'm not, but I've heard of it, and maybe I should be.
That's one of my people always ask me that too. Am
I
I on
haven't.
Blue
I
Sky?
haven't looked
I'm
at
not
it.
on it. I have too much already.
I know. Yeah, it's a lot.
You probably can never have too much when you're running for office, I imagine.
Yeah, but it's still. I still have to do a day job.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So how are you doing that? Like, is your campaigning? Are you still working full time? Are you going to continue to work full time during this campaign?
As long as I can. A girl's got to eat.
Yeah.
I'm not independently wealthy. I eat what I kill. So, as
Yeah.
as we used to say at the firm, yeah. I mean that's what like being a small business owner. It's
Oh,
it's a thing, and I think it makes you really flexible and sort of nimble and creative. Like it forces you to be creative and resourceful and um, multitasking, forces you to be a multitasker and to be more fearless than maybe otherwise you would.
know what the real struggle is too. I
Yeah,
think it's
right,
like reality. Like
right.
business owners are reality based a lot because we know what it's about.
Yeah, I mean, like this is just sort of reminding me of people in general. Despite all the fancy conveniences and everything we have, life is hard, and people go through some really hard stuff. And there is evil in the world because I've seen it, and I definitely know that to be true. But most of the people who come into the criminal justice system, it's a bad choice made on a bad day, and they will be able to redeem themselves. And so, I think a district attorney has to be able to know the difference between what is true evil and, and what is a mistake and everything in between.
Think about this comment. They would like to see judges elected in Massachusetts, not appointed by governors and the governor's council. What do you think?
So the logic behind appointing judges, which is fairly rare. I mean, Massachusetts is one of the only states that does appointments, but the logic is actually to protect them from political influence. Because if you're a judge and you're running for office, then it's just like we're complaining about Morrissey. Like you're not gonna make the right decision on a case because somebody who's coming before you is a donor or something like that. Like, that's just not a great way to make decisions. That's not to say that when judges are appointed, there might be some political, yes, I mean, I don't really know for sure because I'm not a judge, but I have often suspected that there's political decisions being made about judicial appointments. But I think it's less so than if there were elections.
It's interesting, like, no matter what you do, there's got to be some political influence, either way.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's because we're human, right? I mean,
Right. Money talks too, right? I mean, that's,
yeah.
yeah, fortunately. We had another question that came in too that I want to make sure I get to from Reality Check. You kind of answered it earlier, but maybe you just want to flesh it out again. How does Attorney Perkins feel about the current issues with the Massachusetts State Police and Morrissey? Would she evaluate and clean house if she needed to, and does she have that ability?
Yeah, so the district attorney is not the boss of the state police and doesn't have any sort of direct role in hiring or firing, but she can certainly ask for people to be replaced because she does get a say in who works in her office, works with the staff in her office. And also if I think that somebody is doing something wrong, like misconduct, I can report it to the post commission. I can report it to their supervisor. I can, refuse to work with that person again. I could prosecute them in theory. So yes, all those, all that is true. I like to say that describe the best relationship, or the relationship between the police and prosecutors should be like that of a good friend. Like when they're doing the right thing, you're supportive, you have their back, you work together, you also respect each other's lanes. I'm not trying to be a police officer, you're not trying to be a lawyer, but you also should be able to call each other on each other's crap when you need to, and tell the truth. And because otherwise it's not a productive or collaborative relationship. In terms of the staff in the DA's office, I think there, if cleaning house is something that is necessary to make sure that the standards are up to par, the professional standards, the ethical standards are up to par, then that's something I would be forced to do. But I also would want to make sure that people had a chance first to kind of talk about what they, who they really want to be as prosecutors. Because I think, as I said, I think a lot of the fault in the DA's office lies with the leadership. And it may be that the people, that the regular line ADAs are perfectly fine, just need some guidance and, need different kind of leadership. And so if that's true, then great, stay and develop and grow and be a great prosecutor. If not, and you don't want to meet those standards, then find someplace else to work.
What's this one again? I think we kind of answered this already, but I think they've posted several super chats like this. They want more of an answer. They're saying, how do you feel about the First Amendment speech in journalism? How do you feel about the ability to peacefully protest at a trial?
I think peacefully protesting at a trial is fine. I was the editor in chief of my college newspaper, so I do believe in the First Amendment.
At Smith?
Yes, I was.
I was the sports editor at the Bridgewater State.
Oh, really?
Newspaper, college news. It was called the Comment. What was the name of the Smith College newspaper?
The Sophian. So the founder of Smith College was Sophia Smith, and so it was called the Sophian. It was so much fun, but for a year I did not sleep 2 nights a week because that was the night we put the paper to bed.
Yeah, I remember those nights. You just stay
Oh
up
my
and do
goodness.
the Mac computer and get it all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And I'm a really fast typist, so everybody would get mad because they would hear me rumble, like thundering away on the keyboard and, doing the whole thing. So yes, I strong. Also, my father was a writer, and he was a huge free speech guy.
Advocate.
Yeah, advocate, good word. So yeah, I of course support all that. At the same time, you don't want to disturb, you don't want to influence the jury, and that's what the buffer zone, I believe, is all about. Not having the jury or witnesses hearing what's going on outside, and because that really isn't fair. You really, no matter what you think about no matter what you think, we outside that courtroom think about what the evidence is. The only people in the room who really have a say are those 16, whatever it is, 16 jurors, or it'll ultimately be cut to 12, but are those jurors, and their ability to hear the evidence and judge it accurately and carefully, it really has to be protected. And that doesn't mean, it's juries get it wrong. There's no that happens all the time.
Definitely.
And it's more about, it's less, our system is more about the process than it is about the outcome. As long as, because human beings are going to make mistakes, we all have these internal biases, no matter how much we try to get away from them, they might influence us. You do your best to stay away from to not act on bias, but you're also not perfect. So anyway, so that's why it's so important to stick to the process and to protect the process.
Mac Dickles
Mm.
has all the best questions tonight. This is a great question. Speaking of influence, does Djuna have any thoughts on the relationship of the Office of Chief Medical Examiner and the Mass State Police? Should they be independent of each other?
So I think technically they are. Now, I don't know. I mean, but oftentimes, depending on personalities, maybe they work together better or worse or whatever, but definitely they should be independent of each other. I mean, I feel like this is getting to a, well, this makes me think of the Sandra Birchmore case, because I a lot of people, as I was saying before, it's the district attorney, not the ME or the state police, who make decisions about cause or manner of death. So the medical examiner has to make two decisions to certify two things: the cause of death and the manner of death. So the cause of death being like what medical thing, like, okay, they stopped breathing or whatever. And then the second piece is manner, whether it's homicide, accident, or suicide. But that decision can't be made without knowing information from the scene of the death, or information that's going to come from the police. So that's where the three entities wind up working together. So the state police and the DA's office are providing information to the medical examiner for the medical examiner to write that thing. But the district attorney is the one who's ultimately in charge. So if the DA, so an experienced prosecutor, would look at death scene photographs and police reports and be able to see certain things that maybe look out of place. So like in the Sandra Birchmore case, like there was evidence that undermined the idea of a suicide at the scene in her apartment, and then there was also injuries on her body that were not consistent with a homicide. I mean, with suicide, that an experienced DA would have noticed and questioned. And so it's not that the DA's so the DA, if they saw that, would bring that to the ME and say, "Are you sure here? Like, can you revisit that a little bit?" Yeah, and certainly if they can always get expert opinions or ask the ME to go back and do it again. But yeah, they are independent.
Miss Holmes is giving you praise. She's Ohio Floridian. But she's watching all of these different cases, and she's likes your quit wit. I think she meant quick wit.
Yeah.
Quick wit, intelligence, and how she wants to clean out the generational corruption.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And then we got this one. I think we answered the question, Bobby. Bobby came back with another one. He said, I sent a super chat asking about journalistic First Amendment rights in buffer zone issues related to people being able to peacefully protest in front of a courthouse. What's her position? Did you answer that? I think you did.
I did. I did, but Bobby's very concerned, and I appreciate.
He's a stickler. He wants, yeah.
Bobby has a lot of feelings, and and we all have a lot of feelings. No, yes, I do believe in the First Amendment, but I also believe in the buffer zone. I guess, and it's balancing the two things.
And I don't. For me, it's like I don't even mind the buffer zone. I get the point of it. I just feel
Right.
like they're overdoing it. They
Yeah.
pushed everyone so far down. Now they're in front of businesses that are like really upset and losing business.
Mm.
And it's like the whole thing about the journal, who's a journalist, who isn't, like that's really, to me, that's not about protesting. Like I'm
Although
trying to do my job. Like it's like, and not just me. There's other people that came in like from national outlets that came in and they were getting pushed around and I don't know.
I gotta say,
They filed lawsuit. It didn't win, which sucks.
oh,
I don't know.
I gotta say, as a Dedhamite, going through the square last summer was a nightmare. And so, like we have this joke, or actually my son came up with this joke that, Dedham, the only place where you have to wake up in the morning and not only check the weather, but whether or not what this courthouse schedule is. So before you leave the house. So I don't know if any of that was part of the consideration, but I know, like, people in town were tired of the inconvenience.
I can imagine.
It's a funny coincidence that I live in Dedham and and that this is all happening in Dedham. So
yeah, this is the. I think this is appropriate. JD says Mass State Police are overstepping the judge's orders. That's what I feel like's happening. I feel like the Mass State Police.
Oh, I see.
I feel like they feel like what you just expressed too is that they're tired of it. The Mass State Police these guys have been there over and over, and some of them, have quick fuses, and they have quick fuses, and they've been holding it in for all that time, and now they're just like, you know what? The judge gave us more leeway, because it seems like the judge did give them more leeway this time, but I feel like they're even overstepping that. So it's I just hope it doesn't get worse. They arrested this guy the other day, and it just.
Oh, wow.
I watched the video. It was horrifying, and the guy is not like. I don't think the guy has much going on in his life. You know what I mean? So it's like they're picking. If it happened to me, there'd be a lot of pushback on him,
Right.
like on them, in terms of financials and all the whole. I hope he has a good defense, because I feel like they assaulted him, and
Oh, no.
I saw the video, and it kind of broke my heart. Like all the guy's doing is streaming. He's not protesting. He's just saying, "Hey, what's going on? I'm just here." Blah blah blah. And I don't know.
And was he doing that from outside the buffer zone?
No, inside.
Oh.
And basically, the cops were telling him, like, go in that direction. He followed their orders. He went across the street, and then other cops approached him. He was talking to them, and then one of the other guys came over like a hard ass, and he didn't like that he wasn't moving quick enough, that he was asking too many questions.
Yeah, I don't like. I don't like when police do that. I don't really understand it. I mean, yeah, we're not all threats, and so you have to. Everybody needs to have measured responses.
Yeah.
Don't go to zero. There's no need to get to 60 miles an hour before 20 miles an hour.
Yep. Like someone said, 3 troopers were handling it fine. They were, and then the one had escalated it. That's exactly what happened. And I think he's the one that was the most senior of them of all.
Right.
I don't know.
And then the others feel like they can't say anything.
Yeah. So I guess he does have representation. I guess DUI guys on YouTube is going to represent him. So I think there may be a lawsuit against the Mass State Police over it. We'll see. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here, Djuna Perkins. It's been like 2 hours. You spent a lot of time with us tonight, answering like question after question. You probably no other show you're going to be asked so many questions. So I want to thank you so much for being here tonight.
It's
Is
like
there
being
any final thoughts or comments or anything you want to tell the audience tonight?
Yeah, first of all, I was like testifying before a congressional committee, so thank you. Um, no, I really appreciate the opportunity. It's great to be able to really talk for a long time instead of always in a soundbite or a one sentence thing. I'm really enjoying the process of campaigning, and I really hope to get to know everybody or as many people as I can, and to earn everybody's vote. So yeah.
I hope so. I hope people support you, vote for you, donate, especially. Again, we posted, it's pinned to the chat, all our social media. Definitely follow Djuna everywhere she's at. And again, I want to thank you so much for being here tonight. Wish you the best of luck in this campaign. Do you have any upcoming events or anything going on that you want to make people aware of?
Not yet, but we will. We are planning a fundraiser for like June, and I'm still going to town caucuses and things like that. Oh, I know one fine. Can I do a show and
Yeah,
tell? A little show and tell. Okay, hold on.
definitely.
All right. So on right behind me on my desk, I have this cartoon. I don't know if you can see it. Um,
Uh,
can you see it? So this
I'm
is
like, oh yeah, now I can
this
see
is
it.
this has been on my wall since high school, and it was on my bulletin board in my high school bedroom, and I kept it with me ever since. Anyway, the big fish says there is the world is just. The middle fish says there is some justice in the world, and then the little fish says there is no
Oh.
justice in the world. So that's kind of, and you can still see like the little pinhole where it was up on my bulletin board.
So you had that since college? Since when?
High
High,
school.
high
So
school.
yeah, that was
Did you know what you wanted to do in high school?
fifth grade actually. Yes.
Wow.
I got
How
I
did
got
you figure that out? How did you like though? It took me so long to even figure out what I want to do now.
it's all because of my fifth grade teacher, Mrs. Klotzberger. She she gave awards to every kid in the class at the end of the year, and I wanted the English award because I was a good little student, and I didn't get the English award, and instead I got the Scales of Justice award, and I was like, "What the hell is that?" So I went up to her after class and said, "I don't know, Mrs. Klotzberger, what does this mean? I don't understand this." And she said, "Well, you're always standing up for everyone in class. In class when somebody gets in trouble, you're always advocating for them, and so that's what a lawyer does." And I was like, "Oh."
Wow.
So
That's
that's
amazing.
kind
It's
of
an
where it's
amazing story. And it's amazing that you have that little, what do we call that? A little
it's a
art with the
it's a
fish eating the
cartoon. It was a New
fish.
Yorker cartoon. It
Cartoon.
cut out of
Yes,
New Yorker
cartoon.
magazine. So copyright, intellectual. Gotta give them
Yeah.
credit, right?
And shows you that you understand the world. I mean,
Yeah,
that's very clear.
I hope so.
Well, I thank you so much, and
Sure.
we're looking forward to see what you do in this campaign. And please come back again, and thank you so much for your time tonight,
Thanks so
Djuna
much for
Perkins.
having me. All right, take care.
Have a great
Bye.
night.
You too.
I know that's Djuna Perkins. She's running for district attorney in Norfolk County. It's a great interview. I enjoyed that. I know some people might not like every answer that she gives. I get it that she's not glued to the Karen retrial, but you heard her tonight. She's full time. She's working full time right now trying to campaign. She's got too much on her plate. What you see though is someone that's compassionate, professional, and she's aware there's issues. She's already addressing, some of them in her campaign. So I think we're very lucky to have someone like her running against Michael Morrissey. It's gonna be a contested campaign. His Bobby Alessi says citizens have a right to express their opinion and not get arrested for that. We are in America, not North Korea, China, or the Soviet Union. What do you think about Io being arrested? He hired an attorney. I think it sucks. I think it's bullshit. You know, it made me so angry when I saw it. It reminded me of what they did to me last year with Mazza, actually. We had just met Turtle Boy in front of the court. We were talking, hey, Turtle Boy. Next thing you know, they're bum rushing Mazza and I. And Mazza moved out quickly. I did what Bao did. I did exactly what he did. I started asking him questions. I was like, what's, and I could tell. I could tell they started circling me. I'm like, they're going to arrest me. I got to get out of here. Like I could tell that they were looking. That was the first trial. I was saying, oh, because I don't have my papers, I'm not a journalist. That's what it is. You guys determine who's a journalist, even though I've won awards, even though I've been a professional journalist for decades now. Paid for it. Crazy. I think it's BS. And I know this Bao guy, Bao, whatever you say it, he's probably not like a professional or whatever. But I don't care. He wasn't doing anything to anybody. All he was doing was filming. He was streaming. That is a God-given right on a sidewalk. I agree. He wasn't doing any protesting. And I don't like the protest zones either, but I get what the legal rationale is. They don't want to intimidate or harass or influence the jury. Okay, move it down the street. I get it. But when we're just trying to cover it, we're just journalists trying to stream, we're trying to do our job, trying to get pictures, trying to get quotes, and they're not letting us do our job. That's a problem. I hate it. I hate the way that they roughed him up. When all they needed to do was move him down the street, he would have moved. That's a good point. I don't even know if he was in the buffer zone at that point when they arrested him. That's true. Yeah, this is a good comment to him. Melanie Little's left swipe in StreamYard. I don't know where you came up with that one, but that's kind of funny. I see. I don't know. I don't know about dating apps. Is the left swipe or the right swipe the one that you want to? I don't know. You tell me. I don't even know what left swipe is. I know it's like either yes or no, but I'm not sure which one it means. So let me know. Melody's Little's left swipe says the citizens of Norfolk County need to be patient with the change that will come from having a new DA. First step is to get out and vote for that change. Absolutely. And I think even us as viewers, we need not to get frustrated when she doesn't give the answer that we want. You know, June is not going to give the answer we want on every single thing. But what you get is someone that's not afraid to answer questions. You get someone who's professional. You get someone that doesn't have an agenda. Like her agenda is to do the best for the citizens of Norfolk County. And she's got legal experience. So she knows all the ins and outs of why things are done a certain way. And you could tell she's also about justice. I mean, that's the title of her website, Justice, right? Djuna for Justice. Her whole life is. She showed that little cartoon. That's what she's about. And her teacher saw that when she was in high school, that she defended people, that she stood up for people. That's what she's been doing her whole life. She's the perfect candidate. We got to get her elected. Even if you don't like every answer to every question, you feel like she doesn't know enough about Karen Reed. I get it. I get it. But she is the best that we have. And we're lucky to have her. Like most elections, you don't get someone as qualified, intelligent, professional, willing to come on a show like this and answer 2 hours of questions. Not scripted. I mean, she answered every single question we had. Yeah, and she's moving in the right direction. And if she is elected, this will become her full-time job and she will get informed, believe me. This is a woman that wants to be on the case, you know? So, I'm excited. I'm excited for the campaign. Oh, she swipes herself off camera sometimes. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes I have to swipe myself off camera. I do this. I either remove myself or I got this new one where I can just do this. I could Here's Bobby Alessi again. I hope he's not mad at me. What's going on here? Let's put on the big screen so I can see it. Bobby Alessi Slice says, so Mike, what do we do to stop it in Massachusetts? I was born and raised in Massachusetts. The political corruption is rampant. Let's be real. We need massive change in Massachusetts. I know. I mean, I like to be solution based, but a lot of this just takes time, and the most important thing is like we need people to vote. We need people to vote the right way when the election happens in 2026. We need to support her campaign. We need to know that change doesn't happen overnight. It takes place over generations. And so a lot of this awareness, talking about it, exposing it, platforming the most intelligent voices with solutions and answers, and the journalists that expose it, that's what we do right now. We continue to raise awareness so people know that there's an issue, and that not only is there an issue, there's solutions, right? So that's what we got to keep doing. We got to keep educating. We got to look for the experts. We got to put them on the platforms, make sure people are watching. And the most important thing was we have to win elections. We won an election last week or 2 weeks ago. That was a huge election. She won 2-1. Like, it wasn't just, she beat an incumbent by 100 votes. No, she won over 1,000 votes. It wasn't even close in Canton. That's what we need. That's going to bring change. When you have an election like that, that's why Chief Rafferty resigned or retired, whatever we're calling it. She saw the writing on the wall. She saw the votes. It takes generations, but there's battles along the way. It's just like, this is a war. And a war, you don't win a war in 6 months. But we are winning battles one at a time. The first win, hung jury. That was a win. Sandra Birchmore, the FBI coming in and arrest people. That was a win. The last select board election when Rita Lombardi defeated an incumbent was a win. This election, when Susan Harrington beat an incumbent one-on-one by over 1,000 votes, that's a win. That's a battle that we won. What we got to keep doing, just keep winning these battles. 2026 is going to be one of the biggest battles of all. Defeat Michael Morrissey if he doesn't resign. If he doesn't decide to not run again. And you're right, we're only seeing some of it. There's probably a lot more out there. There is. There always is. And the other thing is we need to start getting organized. That's what I like about a lot of what we're doing. Even with just having these shows and having different people following different channels, there's an organizational aspect to that, getting the word out. And there's also organizing going on in different towns, especially even with the standouts. Locals are getting to know each other in different towns. And in Canton especially, so many locals have, over the last 2 years that didn't know each other, have been organizing and winning campaigns for each other. So that's what we got to continue to do. We got to continue to network and work together. And left and right working together, that's what I like. When the people don't have political ideology, they just want to get rid of the corruption. They just want to make it better. They just want to elect someone who's not corrupt, right? We got to defeat Michael Morrissey and Chris Albert. That's what it is. And it does start local. I got to say, like, I've done this before with cannabis. With cannabis, we started doing these non-binding ballot questions because we knew if we could prove that we could win, that we'd draw money to change the law in the state. And we knew if we changed the law in the state, that other states would do the same thing. We were the first state, basically, on the East Coast to do decrim. And we won that campaign. And when we won that campaign, that was the first tipping point in New England. Because soon after, all the other states in New England would start doing the same thing. They'd all of a sudden have medical laws and legal laws. And it just started in 2008. with that first win. And it really started in 2000 when we started doing those non-binding ballot initiatives. And even before that, like 1996, really. So, it took us like 10 years to even get the ballot initiative. But when we finally won that decrim ballot initiative, we were working on that for 10 years. And when we won that in 2008, that changed everything. So that's how this works. It's just like it's the tipping thing. You all of a sudden you're pushing the stone up the hill, and you feel like you'll never get to the top of the hill. And you're just pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. All of a sudden you get to the top of the hill, that stone just starts rolling very slowly. And then boom, it's all over. The tipping point. And it just one step at a time. It's like tug of war. You ever been in a tug of war? and you think you got it, and all of a sudden they stop pulling you back, and then you think you got it again. You go back and forth. That's what this is. This is a tug of war. And I'll say, who's winning? The people are winning. We're winning. And we know we're winning because of what happened with Sue Harrington a couple of weeks ago. Winning in Canton. We're opening eyes up all across the state. I mean, I got text messages. I got messages this week from a couple of my dog customers that I didn't even realize were watching this stuff. People are watching it. Their eyes are being opened. So I gotta go. This has been a great night. I want to thank everyone for watching us all day, basically. From the beginning of the day to the end of the day. We basically did 3 streams today. This was amazing. Can't wait to do it again with you tomorrow. Tomorrow we got a major show. We got attorney Carl Steinbeck. I got look at back-to-back attorneys tonight. I got tonight we had Djuna Perkins, again supporter for Norfolk County DA. Tomorrow night we got attorney Carl Steinbeck. We're going to be covering the Karen retrial tomorrow morning. There's going to be at least one witness is testifying apparently tomorrow. So we'll be covering that tomorrow at 9 a.m. and then 6:30 p.m. tomorrow night with attorney Carl Steinbeck. I'm going to take Saturday night off, I think, and spend it with my family, celebrate my birthday. And then I'm going to do a Sunday night birthday show. We'll see. I haven't announced it yet. I don't even know who's going to be on it, but I'm trying to come up with something good for you on Sunday night on my birthday, actually. And please, if you haven't, check out our website, blog, email list, www.midnightmassnews.com. That's our new domain. Please make sure you subscribe to it. We're going to be posting a story in the next day or two about Susan Harrington and what the citizens of Canton think about her election. Carl is angry. I love what he calls out. Bev Tiff says, yeah, I can't wait to have Carl back on the show. He's been doing some great work. Carl Steinbeck. If you're not following him, check him out on YouTube. He'll be here tomorrow night, Friday night, 6:30 p.m. Bay State says a guy from Cohasset is running, Craig McClellan. Who telling me about him? Hit me up. Send me some info. Oh, he's running for DA. Hit me up on that. I've heard that there is another guy running. Send me his info. I'd like to know more about him. All right, I'm just reading the chat now. Yes. Yeah, I plan to do a birthday stream, I think, on Sunday night. We'll see. We'll see. You know how I get on some of those streams. I'm like, maybe. Yeah, that Sue Harrington thing is amazing. And it's not just Sue either, even though she had a big hand in it. It's the voters. The voters, they made a big decision. And that decision rippled. That had, that's what we got to do. We got to vote. We got to support. All right, I'm going to head out. Have a great night, everyone. We'll see you soon. See you tomorrow. Karen retrial tomorrow morning. And we'll see you tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. I want to thank our moderators. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Jeno, MJ. M was here. I saw her earlier. And thank you, Scott McGinnis. Thank you so much to our moderators. Our mod team is awesome. Night, Jerks. Night, Scott. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for everything you're doing, Scott. Scott is the stand-up guy. Let's get everybody give Scott a round of applause. Not only is he like the stand-up guy in all the chats and mods a lot of different YouTube channels, he's like the guy who does the standouts. He's always there. Every standout. I've been looking to see a standout where Scott doesn't show up. Like honestly, if you can find one that Scott isn't there, you know, he's the best. He is the best. And he does it he's very humble. Does it for the right reasons. Yeah. Thank you for everything you're doing, Scott. And thank you to our mod team too. Scott McGinnis, that's who I'm talking about. There's only one Scott McGinnis. There might be 3 Scotts, but there's only one Scott McGinnis. And Carl Steinbeck too. Yeah, I'm looking forward to having him on tomorrow night. He's amazing. I get to talk to him on the phone sometimes. He's a great guy. I love him. He's another one. He's all about justice. That's what I like about Djuna. She's about justice. That's the bottom line. All right. I was thinking about going down tomorrow, but it's only going to be like one witness, so I'm not going tomorrow. And I got some other stuff I got to do anyways. But I'm hoping I can get down there on a Friday. Like, man, I'm thinking maybe next Friday. We'll see. I really got to get down there. Great. Please make sure you hit the subscribe button on the Young Jurks and midnightmass.news.com, our website. And make sure you follow Djuna Perkins on Facebook and on Twitter, all the places she's on Instagram. We have it pinned at the top of the chat right now on the social media for Djuna for Justice. Make sure you follow her. All right, everyone. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Thank you. Peace. Good night, Jerks.